Welcome to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, a podcast where we talk about the Constitution, politics, history, pretty much anything else I want to talk about. And what's going on right now is we just got through this whole power outage problem in Texas and other areas where the electricity went out because of extreme weather. And so we're going to talk about that today. Oh, and by the way, you can find this. You'll want to watch this episode on YouTube, youtube.com/Annette Talks, because there's going to be some really cool visual aids. And then you're going to want to come back for the episode that I'm posting a week after this one, because it's going to have even more cool visual aids. So anyway, you can find this also on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. And so I'm just really excited about this episode because we just sort of decided on this last minute, because I'm joined by my buddy, Nate Ottosen. Hi, Nate.
Hey, how's it going? Hope y'all are doing all right up there.
Did I pronounce your name right again? Did I pronounce your last name right?
Yeah, Nate Ottosen.
I have been messing up on that lately. I don't know what's up. But so you are in Texas, right?
Yes, Houston.
Houston. And you lost power, because we're recording today is the 20th. I believe I'll be posting this on the 26th of February. And you lost power this last week, right?
We did. It got really cold, and the power grid just froze right up, and everything went dark for a lot of us in Houston. It was for 2.5 days or so.
Yeah. All right. So we are going to talk today about what to do to prepare for, and then to deal with when you lose power and water. And we were originally going to talk about bug out bags and knives, but after talking to you, I realized there's 2 episodes here. So we're going to do this one first, since it's timely. And then we're going to do the one about knives and bug out bags that I'll post the week after. So for you that are listening, you'll know what's going on. But I just think this topic is so important. And, you know, I'm here in Denver, and as I was sharing with Nate, we got down into the negative digit temperatures last weekend, and luckily we didn't lose power. So it was okay. But the whole weekend I was thinking, what would I do if there was no power right now? And you need power for water too, don't you? I mean, even if you didn't lose water, the power kills your water, doesn't it?
What happened, and I was surprised about this, so much of our water treatment and the water that we drink, all of that runs on pressure. I don't think it was like that when we were kids. I think it was gravity fed, but now it all runs on pressure. And as soon as they lost power, about a day later, it just quit flowing for everybody.
So all of a sudden you can't heat your house, you can't charge things, and you can't get water out of the faucet either.
Right. And in my case, it was the same for me and almost all of my neighbors. That first night when we lost power, we lost all of our heat. And when we lost our heat, most of our pipes broke.
Oh, boy.
And because our pipes were broken, we had to shut the water off at our main valves. And so that's why a lot of us didn't have water for quite a while. And as a matter of fact, just yesterday afternoon, I finally got a plumber out here, and they've capped off my broken pipes. So I have water now, but it's limited water. I can wash dishes, I can shower, and things like that, which is really nice. I've got hot water back, but for most of the week, I was without running water.
Yeah. Did your pipes burst?
Yes, 3 of them did, in fact.
So you have to replace those now.
My plumbers came and they patched them, and then that's the other thing. We've got, you know, you think, well, it's no big deal, I'll have a plumber come and fix it. But like I said, everybody on my block, everybody has got burst pipes, and the plumbers are busy. And the guy said, the guy who came and did my work yesterday, he said he's been doing this for 3 days and he's run out of parts.
Wow.
And that's something that I hadn't considered before is, boy, if I have this happen again, I'm going to get some extra tubing and some solder and all the stuff that I would use to fix my pipes, so that they'll have that when they're going to fix the house next.
I'm just curious, does insurance cover that, the burst pipes?
It would, but my deductible is $2,000, and this guy, he charged me $350 to patch my stuff and to get it all back up and running. He'll have to come back again, but I think it'll take him less time to fix it than it did for him to patch stuff, if
Oh,
that makes.
really? Just replacing
Yeah.
it now. All right. So is it was Texas, was that problem there because you guys hit colder temperatures than you usually get?
Sure, that's one of the things that really did surprise everybody. Some of the weather people said, well, it's going to get down to 20 degrees. And it's been down to 20 degrees here before, but it got down to 12. And some people say they had 9 degrees. And our houses here, they just aren't built for that kind of cold. All of my pipes are in my attic. Now they're covered by insulation, but they're in the attic. And when the heat went out, um, they just froze, which,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what water does. It freezes, it's natural.
Yeah,
So
20 doesn't seem so bad in Denver. Like that's still, you can go outside and go for a walk if you bundle up. But yeah, in
yeah.
Texas where you're not used to that, and I can see where that would be pretty bad.
And 20 is not so bad, but it was the 12, I think, that really did for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us what you were prepared for and what you weren't prepared for. What surprised you and what didn't?
Well, and that's a good question. And I'll probably start with what surprised me the most. We get a lot of hurricanes down here, particularly right on the ocean in the Bay Area where I am. So we're prepared quite often for emergencies, and we're particularly prepared for things like losing power. But I didn't expect to lose power. And when I've got a hurricane and I lose power, I've got this device right here. This is a battery, and it's got a lantern on it. And then
That's pretty big. It looked kind of like a generator.
it's not a generator, but yeah, and some people down here have generators. Somebody in my neighborhood had a generator, and it was making so much noise the night everything fell apart that I really wanted to go find it and turn it off because it was so noisy. But of course, I'm not supposed. It's not mine. But he did run out of gas about the time that about 6:30 in the morning he ran out of gas.
So unless you have, so if you have a gas driven generator, you got to have a lot of gas if you want to keep it going.
That's right. If you're gonna run gasoline, you better have more than a gallon.
Yeah.
Now there are some houses here that have got these little natural gas generators that kick on. And I looked into buying one of those about 10 years ago, and they were expensive. They were $6,000 to $8,000, and everybody was like, "Well, but they'll add $6,000 to $8,000 to the value of your house, and so it's not like you ever have to pay for it." And I was like, "Yeah, if I was planning on moving and then buying another one again, I don't know." But they're down. They tell me now they're down to 3,000 or 4,000, and if they really are down to 3,000, I might get one of those.
So they're a fixture. They're not something that's mobile.
Right. They put them in, and they tap into your natural gas line, and they just kick on when your electricity kicks off. And if I stay in Houston for another 15 years, I might think about getting one of those as soon as I get a new air conditioner.
So did the people that have those, did they have power through this whole
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, they did, but I don't know anybody who did. Now, what I do know is that, and this was an interesting thing, there's an HEB grocery store just a couple of blocks from me. And they, after Hurricane Ike, HEB brought in generators like that and put it in all of their grocery stores. So HEBs never lose power. And the day after all of this, when I realized that I was going to be without power and some stuff, I wanted to go get when my pipes broke, I wanted to go get some of that dry shampoo so that I wouldn't look so bad, and I wanted to get a what do you call those things? Electric razor, because I didn't want to use any water to shave with, and so I drove over to the HEB. And it looked like a Chick-fil-A restaurant. I mean, their parking lot was full, but there were people down the street in both directions just waiting. And I was like, no, I can't do that. That's too many people but it is important to note, if you live in Texas and there's a natural disaster, there's a pretty good chance your HEB will have its act together before almost any place else will.
Okay, so I've been trying really hard not to laugh because I know what HEB stands for. Do you?
I don't know what HEB stands for.
I visited my
I've lived
sister.
in Texas for.
I visited my sister in Texas. She lives in Midland, and been to Houston, and I think we were in
Sure.
Austin when I went into an HEB, and I had no idea what it meant. And so I went to, and I paid for whatever I was buying. And I said, so what does HEB stand for? And and totally straight face, because I had no idea. And the cashier or the bagger told me it's the name of the guy that started the grocery store. And it's either Howard or it's a Howard or something, but the last name is Butts. And so every time I go to Texas, I have to go to HEB and I have to text my sister and tease her about it because it's the Butts grocery store. And so we made a lot of jokes about Butts. Anyway, every time you mention HEB, that goes through my head. So, but
My kid even worked there for 5 years and I didn't know that.
Yeah, I dare you next time you go in there to ask them, what does HEB stand for? So
No, I'm not going to do that.
No, well, you know now, so you can't keep a straight face. Harold or Howard E, and I don't know what E stands for, but Butts, that will always be in my mind. So, but you brought up a few interesting things. That dry shampoo,
yeah,
is a good idea. I actually have it because I have a daughter that doesn't like to shower every day and she gets greasy hair.
Yeah.
And so I refuse to send her to school with greasy hair. So on the days that I can't get her to shower, she gets dry shampoo. And so it's a little pricey, but it's worth having it around in an emergency because if you don't want to use your water, especially as a female, we use a lot of water to shower and shampoo. And so if you want to make your hair decent, and for us, we're going to throw it in a ponytail, dry shampoo it and throw it in a ponytail. At least you won't look terrible. So that when you go down to HEB, people won't point at you. But the other thing you mentioned was an electric razor for men, right? So you don't have to use water for shaving. So if shaving is a concern, that's a good idea.
Well, and that's something I really hadn't considered before because, when I camp, I don't shave, but one of the things I meant to tell you is when you talk about things that I did do and things that I didn't, I have that nice big battery and it's great because it'll power your phones, it'll charge your cell phones, but I didn't expect to lose power and I forgot to plug it in.
Oh no.
So I really was kicking myself. I thought, here I am, I'm supposed to be somebody who knows how to handle this sort of thing, who can think ahead, who can use his mind. And I completely forgot to plug in my nice big power source. And
you said it sat there and you never used it.
Yes, it sat there. Now, we were without power for 2 days, and on the third day, the power came back on for a little while, and I immediately hooked that up. Well, when I knew I didn't have power for that, the first thing I did was I plugged it in because I didn't want to miss a second of it, because I knew that other people in the city were having rolling blackouts. And so from what I knew talking to people at work or from work, that they'd have power for an hour or two. And I wanted to get as much electricity into that battery as I could.
It needed to be charged. What you're saying is it wasn't charged. It was sitting around not charged. So
yes, because the last time I went camping, I didn't charge it back.
It was a doorstop, basically.
It was a doorstop, and it just sat there with its big aspect and accused me of being bad at what I.
So you got to make sure if you've got emergency stuff that is needs to be charged, it needs to be charged. I'll bet it's going to be charged from now on.
It will. Now, because I've been through hurricanes before, I did have pretty much everything else charged. I know that a lot of your viewers have stuff like this. This is just a little.
Those that are just listening, what that is.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. This is just a little charging battery for your phone.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have these, and they'll put it in their purse or in their backpack or whatever, so that they've got a little extra battery. if you think that bad things are coming, be sure all of these are charged up, because my neighbors across the street, they came over here the day after they lost power, and they were really upset because all their iPhones were dead and they couldn't get hold of anybody and they didn't know what they were going to do, and they were really upset. And I was like, well, that's okay, because I've got this. Now this is I know that your listeners can't hear it, so I'll try to explain what it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is a charger made by Phoenix, and Phoenix makes flashlights, and they have these batteries. They're 2600 mAh batteries. I don't know what that means really. They're just these big batteries that Phoenix uses in their flashlights. And for a while there, the company that I work for, they were a Phoenix dealer, and they had this charging unit so that you could charge up these rechargeable batteries for your Phoenix. But it stayed there for 6 months and nobody bought it, and it wasn't expensive. And I looked at it and I was like, I wonder why people don't want that. So I got to looking at it, and it has a USB port for charging it, but it's also got one for charging your devices. So I looked at the owner's manual, and you can use this for charging your devices. But the thing that's coolest about this is that I've got 8 of these batteries, and it takes about one of these to charge your phone for a day. So if I know bad times are coming, I can sit there and charge all. Well, I actually had all of them charged up ahead of time. Yay. Because after I went camping last time, I charged all of these because I use these for my flashlights. I got my nice big Phoenix flashlight here.
Is that Phoenix spelled the way we're used to it being spelled?
No, it's Fenix.
That's what I was thinking. And so you've got a flashlight, and then what do you call, what's the other thing called? It's
just a battery charger.
Battery charger, but it has a plug so you can plug your devices into it.
Right. It's on the back, they say it's an ARE-2X dual channel charger, but it's a fantastic piece of kit. I always worry when people say, well, I've got my bug out bag or my 72-hour kit put together, and they're always like, and I've got the newest and the greatest and the coolest. And I'm like, well, now how much have you used that? Have you gone out camping with it? Have you had a time where you were out of power? How well does that stuff perform? Because this is that little charger that I showed earlier for your phone. It's a nice little charger, and it was kind of expensive, but it's only good for about half of a phone charge, and it was really expensive.
Yeah.
Whereas, this little battery charger from Phoenix, I think it cost me $13. Now the batteries are kind of expensive, but the whole system worked fantastic. And I can't stress how nice it was to be able to say to my neighbors, don't worry, I can charge your phones and I can charge mine, and I'll still have juice left over for all of my other electronic devices.
Oh. Yeah, that's awesome. Because I think most of us, I have one of those little pink batteries, like what you showed us, the black one, that I charge, I plug in to the wall, and then it's a fast charger, so it charges my phone pretty quickly, but one charge is it. The other thing that I don't think people think about too is when they're in that situation, that they need their phone to last as long as they can, so they need to not like go onto Facebook. Get Facebook app off your phone because it takes a lot of juice. Yeah, I actually found that out by listening to Rush one time. And so I bought a used phone because I dropped my other one into the sink. And so I'm like, I'm not going to spend a bunch of money. I just bought this. So I bought a used one for $80, and it does what it needs to do, but it doesn't hold a charge as long as a new one. So I'm always trying to find ways to save the juice. And so if the power went out, Facebook would be the first app to go, even though it would be really sad. But, I can just go to the website and go on Facebook that way, and it won't take as much juice as an app. So it's just a little thing. But I like your idea. I think I'm going to need to get one of those battery chargers, if nothing else, because it's not too expensive. And at least I would know I would have phone for a couple of days if I need to.
Well, the batteries cost, I think the batteries cost me about $18 a piece. They actually weren't cheap, but they're fantastic batteries. I don't know how you, if you can tell. Oh yeah, you kind of can tell what a good flashlight
Yeah,
that
that's pretty
is.
bright.
Uh, it is. It has enough. I mean, it can light up my block, you know.
Yeah.
And it uses two of those big old batteries.
Mhm.
Now I do have some other flashlights that are older that are made by Surefire, and they take these batteries,
That's a little battery.
and I always try to keep. They're little fat batteries, and they take two of them, and I always try to keep just in my sort of go-to spot. When we talk about bug out bags, one of the things I've noticed is that I don't really have a bug out bag. I have a bug out spot where I keep my gear, and then
Ah,
I can pack my gear in my bag for what I think I'm going to need versus trying to have all that together, because no matter how hard you try to keep all that together, it just it doesn't work,
you're
and you
gonna
never
use
have the
it.
right stuff.
Yeah.
So I've got a bug out drawer, and I just
Oh,
keep a bag by it, and then I'll load the bag when I'm camping with what I think I'm going to need. But I keep my little those little batteries for my other light in this little waterproof container that
oh,
they
okay.
used to sell.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, we'll go
and
into more
it's
detail
pretty
on
cool.
that on the next episode when we talk about bug out bags.
Yeah.
So what else were you prepared for or not prepared for?
Well, one of the things that I had that was really nice is, of course, when we ran out of water, they had you have to boil all of your water now if you're going to drink it. So I have a little kettle.
Oh, that's what that
Now
is.
this
Yeah.
is, yeah, this is the one that would go in my bug out bag. Uh, but it's still nice because it was there and I could use it for boiling. Oh, that does remind me that like my
So where
neighbors,
were you boiling? Were you able to boil before electricity went out? Like, do you have a fireplace that you're boiling on, or was that for after the electricity came on?
I've got when I bought my house, one of the things that I insisted on having was gas. I wanted a gas stove and a gas oven, and I wanted a fireplace too. And they were like, "This is Houston. Nobody ever uses their fireplace." And I was like, "Yeah, only they might." And so I've got a gas fireplace. I would prefer it was a wood one, and I would prefer that I have a garage full of wood and coal.
Right.
But this is the house that I found that I liked, and it did have gas, and so I had gas. But the thing is, some of my other neighbors were like, "Oh yeah, I have gas, but I can't light my oven, my
Oh,
stove," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, people!" So I always try to keep some of these little barbecue lighters on hand
uh,
for stuff like that, and they were like, "Oh, that's how you do it." And I thought, well, you can use matches too. Just be careful when you do use matches because you're close. And I thought again a little bit about this, and we talked about this earlier. Napoleon said no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And one of the things that if you're going to be ready for a disaster, you have to have some mental flexibility, and you have to say, all right, I've got a problem I didn't figure I would encounter, but what have I got? What are my resources, and how can I deal with this problem with the resources that I have available to me? Another thing that happened, and this really surprised me. I have a friend, and he came to work on Thursday after things kind of got a little more back to normal, and we opened up the shop, and he was telling me how he nearly froze to death. And I was like, "Why did you nearly freeze to death?" He says, "Well, you know, we had all electric heat, and so when the power went out, we didn't have anything, and so I just laid there in my bed and I shivered." And I was like, "Well, you should have put a couple more blankets on." And he was like, "Well, I had three, and it still wasn't enough." And I was like, "Yeah, I can understand that, but why didn't you get your sleeping bag and put that in between your blankets?" And he looked at me and he went, "What?" And I went, "Why didn't you get your sleeping bag?" I said, "You know, your camping gear is emergency gear as well as camping gear. And you can use your camping gear in an emergency. And he was like, my bag's rated to 0 degrees. And I was like, yeah. He goes, I don't know why I didn't even think of that. So, one of the things you have to do is allow yourself that mental flexibility. You kind of need to sit back, relax, and say, okay, what can I do to make this better? And we talked a little bit about this too. I really think when you put together an idea for disaster, a couple of the things that you need is you need some comfort objects or some things that make your mind realize that it's not the end of the world. My poor next door neighbors who couldn't charge their phones, when they came over to get their phones charged, they were so upset because they were like, it's been 2 days and we haven't had a cup of coffee. And I was like, why haven't you had a cup of coffee? And they were like, well, because the power's out and we can't plug our coffee maker in. And I thought, oh my goodness. So I've got this little pot. I use this for actually making chocolate.
And is that another kettle? That's a different kind of.
Yeah, it's the Italians call this a mocha pot, and this is how they make coffee. And I'm going to need a new ring. You can tell it's starting to get gummed up.
Huh.
But I just made chocolate with this morning. So it's, well, you should smell this.
Yeah, you told me about your cup
Oh
of
my
chocolate.
goodness. I'm chocolate and Pretty Women are my weaknesses, of course. But you just put your chocolate mix in there and you put your water in here, or coffee. If you drink coffee, you put your coffee in there, and then you can just boil it, and it'll boil right through that chocolate up into the top of the pot right there.
So that needs to go on a gas stove, right?
You can put it on a gas stove. And remember when we said, your cooking gear is your emergency gear. If you've got a little backpacking, excuse me, if you've got a little backpacking burner or a Coleman stove, you can make stuff like coffee or chocolate, in my case, on this. You can get a little kettle like this one at any sporting goods store. This one's made by Stanley, and it costs $18. It's such a clever little.
It looks like just like a metal canister with a lid on it.
It is. It's just this little pot, and it has this folding handle, and it comes with 2 of these little cups. Or I only keep 1 cup in it because usually it's just me camping. Then I've got plenty of room to put in teas. You could put in a can of tuna if you wanted to, or I usually make up some cornbread mix and then I put it in there. But it just folds up into this nice, neat little thing, and it's fantastic for boiling water.
So you put that over the fire then, basically, when you're camping.
Yeah, you can put this right onto the fire, and it'll boil your water for you. And then if you have a few, another thing that I would kind of recommend people do, when you're under stress like this, you got a couple of comfort objects. Get your coffee and things like that, or your chocolate, in my case. Have a book that you really like to read by one of your favorite authors. Have a teddy bear, for goodness sake, But there's another thing that a lot of people don't think about, and that's that you may have the ability to cook food, but it can be tiring and stressful. And so if you have to drop what you're doing in the middle of saying, well, like the second day, or the third day of having our power out, it warmed up during the middle of the day to about 30 degrees. And all of my pipes that were frozen and it had burst thawed out. And so in the middle of all of everything else I'm doing, I had to go out and shut my water down and then try to come back in and mop up that giant mess.
Oh gosh.
And in a time like that, you don't really want to stop and cook a brisket. You just don't have time. So it's a good idea to have some good emergency, easy to prepare foods. And I like, in cases like that, I like MREs or backpack meals. They usually have a lot of sodium. I don't recommend them for long term, but in a case like that where you just have to dump a cup of hot water into a packet and shake it up, or take your MRE and put a little water into the warmer and lean it up against there and let it warm itself up. Sometimes when you're in a situation where you have a lot of things to worry about, if you don't have to worry about your food, that's really helpful.
Yeah. So MREs. And or you can just have some bread and some peanut butter and jelly, just make yourself a sandwich and just I saw that you showed me earlier what your neighbors brought. Tell me about how you and your neighbors got together and spent your time.
Okay, that's good. So, and this is a good example of one of the really nice things that often comes out of disasters like this. They came over to get their phones
Uh-oh.
charged.
Oh, your sound got funky for a second there. I don't know if you're
Oh,
something
can
you
you
were.
hear me now?
Yeah, you're fine. Okay, go
Okay,
ahead.
good. So they came over, they got their phones charged. We made them some coffee on their little thing. And one of the things that was nice is they were like, they went over and they got some Girl Scout cookies,
Yeah.
which were comforting, and they were Thin Mints. I thought, well, that's ironic because this is my favorite Girl Scout cookie. I don't even know how they knew that, but yeah, they got, so they brought the Thin Mints, and then they talked for a while, but they aren't the kind of conversationalists that you and I are. And if you guys are listening to that, I hope you'll forgive me. But another thing that's nice is having some board games. I think in today's society where we have YouTube and Facebook and constant entertainment, we kind of forget why our parents and our grandparents played board games. And
Mhm.
they'd never played apples to apples before.
Oh,
And
fun.
this is a mom, and she's a little younger than my mom, and her daughter's just a little younger than me. And they'd never played apples to apples, and they laughed so much, and they had such a good time. Well, they were over here, and I got to know them really well. And I've lived at this house for 10 years, and I've seen them come and go. I waved at them. I know she's a nurse, but I didn't know what her daughter did. But she works as a nurse in a, oh no, I've forgotten the word, hospice.
Ah, that's got to be depressing.
I thought so too. And so, but she told me it actually wasn't. And she told me some really interesting stories about people dying, which normally I wouldn't have listened to because I'm alive. I don't want to talk about death. I mean, if I had a goth girlfriend, I would talk to her about that just because
Well,
I
I
would
think
think
I love those stories just because I always love to hear when, did you still feel the presence in the room? What were their last words? I love those stories. So that would be really fascinating to me.
she told me a really interesting one. I hope I don't know about sharing it. I'm sure it's fine. She told me that she had this man woke up and he walked down the hall and he's like, Mr. Jones, what are you doing up? And he said, I've got to put my uniform on. And she's like, what? She said, I've got to put my uniform on. And I stopped her and I said, was he in World War II? And she's like, how did you know? And I thought, well, uniform on.
Yeah.
And she said, well, here, I'll help you back to bed. And he's like, but I've got to have my uniform on. And she goes, don't worry, you've got it on. And she said she put him back in bed and he's like, is it straight? Is everything looking right? And and she said, yes, your tie's straight and everything's good. And 5 minutes later, he just died.
Wow. So he knew his time was coming and he wanted to be presentable.
Right,
He wanted to
exactly.
look good. That's awesome. See, I love those kind of stories. They're awesome to me. I know this is a total tangent, but I love the idea, and I've heard this from more than one source, that people often do know when their time is, and sometimes they have a little bit of control over it when they're at that stage. They get to choose. So,
That's certainly what she
um,
said.
but but anyway, the point of this is that you get out there and you get to know your neighbors. And so for one thing, you can do some horse trading because somebody's going to have something that you don't, and you're going to have something they don't. You can cooperate and work together, but also you guys you got to play a game together and have fun. And so like you made what could be a really bad, dreary, depressing situation into a fun one.
It
And
was.
I love that idea. And it didn't require any kind of electronics to get close to each other and to open up and get to know your neighbors. So I think that's hugely important, because you got to get through these things mentally as well as physically. So I think that's an awesome thing that you guys did. You
It
also,
was.
though, you learned that you needed to charge your CPAP machine ahead of time, right?
I did. And that's like I said, I felt silly because I thought for all of the work I do in preparation for stuff like this, and that's one thing that was really important that I completely forgot. And believe me, I paid for it. I had
Mm,
2.5 really rough nights.
yeah.
Now, a couple of things that I did do the last time we had a hurricane scare, I went and I bought a couple of cases of bottled water, and
Mhm.
I put them in the freezer in my deep freeze. And as soon as we lost power here, when the power went out, I took one of those cases out and I took all the bottles out and I distributed them in different areas of my refrigerator so that all of my food there would stay cold. And
Oh, that's smart. I didn't catch before
that
why
worked
you
really
kept
well.
them in.
And so that's one.
I didn't catch before why you had frozen them. Um, I thought he's concerned about cold water, but that's brilliant because you just took them out and put them in your refrigerator and you kept your cold food cold longer after the electricity went out.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that we do in Houston on a fairly regular basis because it's not uncommon to lose power for a day or two during the hurricane season.
Oh,
And so I was ready for that. I just didn't charge up my CPAP battery.
but having a lot of bottled water on hand, you also said that when you knew it was coming, you turned on the water and you filled up your tub. So you'd have water to flush with and brush your teeth with and stuff like that.
I did. I filled up both my bathtubs and then I filled up, I've got like a little uh igloo water, one of those 3.5 gallon cooler things that your parents used to use camping. I
Uh-huh.
filled one of those up and I put it over my sink so that I could wash dishes with it. Um, and then I also filled up all the spare 5 gallon buckets I had laying around too. And one of the things that was nice about that is, when my other coworkers didn't have any water for anything but drinking,
Mhm.
uh, I was able to I've got a big spaghetti pot and I was able to put that on to boil, and I used that for a sponge bath um during the time when nobody else had anything, and at least I felt halfway civilized,
Right. So at
which
least,
was nice.
so that's something too. Yeah. And I was thinking about that. I talked to a friend and she says she can buy there's a plastic liner that she bought on Amazon. That's kind of like just a big plastic sheet that you can put down the bottom of your bathtub, because if it's not super clean,
Yeah.
you're not going to want to try and clean that puppy real quick. But you can put it down on your bathtub and run the water into it. And then that's even drinking water that you wouldn't worry about drinking
Yeah.
too much. But I was thinking about that because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bathtubs in this house. And so I think the first thing I would do
Yeah.
if I heard water was going to go or power was going to go is go and fill up all 4 of those bathtubs. But you're right. Also find
I
buckets
would
or other containers.
Yeah, because you have a lot of containers around your house that you don't even know about. But if I could do this again, back years ago I bought a thing called a water bob, and I think it's spelled just like it sounds, B-O-B, water bob. And I do wish that I had a couple of those because my water lasted for about a day and a bit before it kind of leaked out of my bathtubs.
What?
So it was there for a while, but it was,
What's a
sorry, go
water
ahead.
bob?
Well, oh, sorry. It's like what you're talking about. It's a big liner for your tub, but it's more
Ah,
of a big bladder,
oh,
and you put it in your tub, and it's got a little like suction pump that goes with it. It's pretty crude, but it actually works. And and I don't know. I'm sure you can get those on Amazon too, but I used to have one of those, but uh, I lost that in the divorce.
I was just picturing that written up in the divorce decree. Water bob
Yeah.
goes to the wife. Um,
It wasn't in the divorce decree. It's just it was something she insisted on, and you know, my ex-wife is a interesting person, but um, she's not exactly long-term preparation minded, and I wanted her to have that anyway because I figured she could use it more than I could.
Maybe you'll need to get another one. Well, that's good to know that the water in tubs lasts about a day little over a day. So it's not going to get you through 3 or 4 more days. So you've got to have some other water sources. I've been collecting bottled water from Target. They have I can't remember what the brand is, but it's a Target brand, and they're gallons, and they have a little thing on the top.
Oh, yeah.
Pick them up with and hold them with. So every time I go shopping now, I pick up a couple of those, and I'm stacking them in the garage. Just because if something like this happens, you got to at least have water to drink. But then once you know you have enough to drink, you got to have, like you said, for cooking, some of hygiene.
Yeah.
We talked about hygiene on another episode, but also having wipes around for things that if you don't want to use water, you should have other things that like you said, the dry shampoo. So water is something you need to really pay attention to before, because if it goes without if you've got no notification at all, you better have some water somewhere, right? If you don't have time to fill it up. But if you do have time to fill it up, start looking around right away. Turn on the tubs and then look around for buckets, bowls, any other thing you can think that would hold water, and fill those.
Exactly. And that worked out pretty good for me.
Good. So what other advice can you give us for getting through having a sleeping bag and getting to your camping gear is really good too, because if the electricity goes out and you're cold, you're going to have to layer. You said something about wool blankets before we started recording.
Sure. That's something I really find interesting is, all of your grandparents had wool blankets. They always had a lot of them, and they're kind of expensive, but they're worth every penny, because even if they get damp, they'll still keep your body heat in. So I would highly recommend that people get at least a couple of good old military blankets. Now, I know those are prickly, and people are like, oh, that's so uncomfortable. Well, that's why you put a sheet on first.
Right.
Or even if you put your sheet down and you've got a cotton blanket, then you put the wool one, then put another cotton one on above it, that makes a huge difference. There are a lot of good wool blankets that are only 80% wool. I'd prefer 100, but you always pay so much more for that 20%. But there are a lot of good wool blankets coming out of India right now that a lot of different people have. I think Mammoth is one of the name brands. There's one called Swiss Army that's not really Swiss Army. It comes from India, but it's an 80% wool blanket, and it's pretty good. There are a few others that make decent blankets that aren't terribly expensive. Most of the ones that you can get under $100 that come out of India, they need washing though. So if you get a good wool blanket from India, from Amazon, or any of those surplus dealers, it's a good idea to get some woolite and put those in your tub and just kind of hand wash them real good, and then hang dry them. Don't dry them in your dryer, because if you dry them in your dryer, first of all, a lot of the felting will come apart. They're felted together, and your dryer will pull a lot of that apart. And second of all, sometimes it'll shrink them. So wash them out really good a couple of times with some woolite in your tub, and then what do you call it? Wring them out good, and then put them out to dry. Do that on a warm summer day, and they'll be dry in no time. And you'll be surprised how much fluffier and more comfortable those blankets will be, and how much warmer they'll be.
Awesome. Yeah, I had no idea. I never even gave it any thought. And I haven't even thought about woolite. And then just now you're like, woolite. Oh, wool. Blankets. Woolite. That's funny. All right. Any other parting recommendations before we wrap this up?
Well, yes, I guess my parting recommendation would be kind of like I said earlier, don't let your mind lock up. Of all of your survival equipment, the most important one you have is the one between your ears. Learn how to use it.
Excellent. I like it. Well, I'm glad that you got your electricity is back on now, right? Fully.
Oh yeah, I've got all my electricity back on. I've got about 80% of my water.
And you've plugged in your battery to charge it.
I did. That's the first thing I did as soon as we started going through those rolling blackouts. I plugged that in so that, and I did use it that next night, because We had power for about 4 hours. It was just enough to get me 6 hours of power on my battery. And so I got 6 hours of decent sleep on that third or fourth night. I don't remember which one it is.
People ready for
It all
it.
kind of bled together.
Yeah, I'll bet. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your knowledge. And we will come back again after we close this off, and we'll do our knives. And I'm looking forward to seeing those sharp knives. And
Sounds great.
And just for those of you that are listening, Nate is a gunsmith, and he joined me to talk about getting guns and ammo during difficult times. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go find it. I can't remember what number it is offhand, but probably 63 or 64, something like that. Anyway, go find Nate's episode on guns and ammo. That was awesome. And we're also planning on in the future doing one, Guns 101, just to introduce people like me who are gun neophytes to the world of guns. So thanks for joining me, Nate. We're going to wrap up, and then I'll join you again for the next episode. And
My pleasure.
thank you for all that are listening to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, where freedom lovers gather.